All right, today we're going to dive into an invisible world that's all around us and, yeah, even inside us. We are talking about microorganisms. And we're going to try and answer a pretty big question. Are they our friends or are they our foes? Let's get into it. So let's kick things off with something you've probably seen. You buy a fresh loaf of bread, you forget about it for a few days, and then you come back to find, those fuzzy, kind of grayish white patches all over it. What is that stuff? Well, that's mold, and it's your first peek into a massive hidden world. You've just met a citizen of the microbial empire, a world that exists on a scale we just can't see with our own eyes. So, what are we really talking about here? Well, the official definition is pretty simple. Microorganisms, you can call them microbes for short, are just living things that are so tiny you need a microscope to see them. And this isn't just one type of creature, it's a huge category that includes bacteria, fungi, like our friend the bread mold, protozoa, and even some types of algae. Now, it is really easy to just think of them as germs or, stuff that spoils our food. But that is only half the story. First, let's look at how these tiny organisms are actually essential allies, working for us every single day. Just think about your kitchen. Ever wonder how milk turns into yogurt or curd? Well, that's all thanks to a bacterium called lactobacillus. And what about what makes bread dough rise up into a big, fluffy loaf? That's the work of another microbe, yeast, which is actually a type of fungus. They're basically our microscopic chefs. And their resume? It's seriously impressive. They're crucial for making foods from cheese to pickles. They ferment sugars to create wine and vinegar. Out in nature, they're the ultimate cleanup crew, breaking down organic waste. And, maybe most importantly, they're used to create life-saving medicines and even make our soil more fertile so we can grow crops. Our understanding of this world didn't just happen overnight. It was built on the work of some absolutely brilliant scientists. Back in 1798, Edward Jenner pioneered vaccines, a totally revolutionary idea. Then in 1857, Louis Pasteur figured out the science of fermentation, changing food forever. And then in 1929, Alexander Fleming had a little accident that would change medicine for good. The story behind this is just amazing. Fleming was working with bacteria, and he noticed some green mold had contaminated one of his lab dishes. But here's the thing, all around that mold, the bacteria were gone. They were dead. He realized the mold was making something that killed them, and from that one little observation, the very first antibiotic, penicillin, was born. It literally changed the course of human history. Okay, so microbes are our helpers, our chefs, our pharmacists. But now it's time for a dramatic turn. Let's look at the other side of the coin, the microscopic menace. This is when these tiny organisms become our foes. So here's the crucial point. Not all microbes are friendly. The ones that make us sick are called pathogens. Think of them as microscopic invaders that can get into our bodies through the air we breathe, the water we drink, or the food we eat, and they can make us really, really ill. And this table just shows you how different these threats can be. You've got bacteria causing diseases like tuberculosis and cholera, which can spread through the air or contaminated food. Viruses are behind things like chickenpox. And then you have protozoa. These are single-celled organisms, kind of like tiny animals, and they're responsible for malaria. And the plot thickens, because these pathogens are pretty clever. They don't always just wait for us to breathe them in. Sometimes they hitch a ride. They use other animals as their own personal taxi service to get from one person to the next. And here is probably the most famous example of all. The parasite that causes malaria is carried by the female Anopheles mosquito. The mosquito itself isn't sick, it's just the carrier, the delivery truck for the pathogen. And that's why controlling mosquito populations is so important for public health. Okay, so we've seen the good guys and the bad guys. So what do we do about it? Well, we fight back. Over the last couple of centuries, humanity has come up with an incredible toolkit of strategies to tip the scales in our favor in this constant battle. A lot of our best defenses are actually pretty simple. Just washing your hands is a super powerful first line of defense. In medicine, we have vaccines that train our bodies to fight off pathogens before we get sick. And antibiotics are the weapons we use to kill bacteria that have already invaded. And right in our own kitchens, we use all sorts of tricks to preserve food and stop harmful microbes from growing in the first place. Let's circle back to that brilliant scientist, Louis Pasteur. He didn't just figure out fermentation. He also gave us a totally revolutionary way to make our food safer, specifically our milk.
The process, which we call pasteurization, is just beautifully simple. You heat the milk just hot enough for a short time to kill most of the harmful bacteria. Then you chill it really fast to stop any survivors from multiplying. It's the whole reason we can buy milk from a store and know it's safe to drink without having to boil it first.
So we have friends and we have foes, but the real story, the bigger picture, is so much more than that. To really get a handle on microorganisms, we have to see them not just in our kitchens or hospitals, but as the fundamental architects of our entire planet. Take a look at this number, 78%. Any guesses what that is? That is the amount of nitrogen in the air that we're all breathing right now. And nitrogen is an essential building block for all life, for proteins, for DNA, but there's a huge problem. Plants and animals can't just breathe it in from the air and use it. So how in the world does all that nitrogen get into the food chain? Well, the answer is right here, in these little bumps you see on the roots of plants like peas and beans. These are called root nodules, and they are basically tiny factories just packed with special bacteria. These incredible bacteria do something called nitrogen fixation. They literally pull nitrogen gas out of the atmosphere and convert it into a solid form that plants can soak up through their roots. This process is happening on a planetary scale, every second of every day. Without these microbes, the entire foundation of life on Earth would just collapse. They literally feed the world. So we come all the way back to our original question, friend or foe? And as we've seen, yeah, they're both. But maybe that's the wrong question to ask. Perhaps the real takeaway here is that these tiny, invisible organisms aren't just one thing or the other. They are the complex, powerful, and absolutely essential foundation of our entire planet.